Hello and welcome to the Rangers News YouTube channel. My name is Cameron Willis and once again I'm joined by Jordan Carlisle as we look ahead to Rangers' clash with Sparta Prague in the Europa League. It's match day 2 of the group stages and Rangers will be looking to bounce back from a 2-0 defeat to Lyon, while Sparta Prague kicked off their campaign with a 0-0 draw against Brøndby. Just before we get started, if you want to click like, want to click subscribe, it helps the channel grow. And yeah, let's just get stuck in, Jordan. I think the best place to start might be with the major news coming out about Connor Goldson. It's just kind of come out in the last half an hour or so that the Rangers vice captain and the man who played every single minute for Rangers last season will not be available for the match for reasons that haven't exactly been clarified. I think Steven Gerrard made some interesting comments about kind of COVID testing in the press conference, and he didn't mention that Goldson would be out, so it did come as a bit of a surprise. It comes at a very difficult time for Rangers with Philip Helander having a long-term injury and Jack Simpson, of course, not being included in the Europa League squad. A decision that looks more kind of drastic by the second. But yeah, what's your thoughts on Connor Goldson being missing? That is a huge miss for Rangers.
Yeah, huge blow. It's a big surprise, isn't it? And probably if you look at the starting 11 in terms of like importance, probably take out Morelos maybe for in terms of European football. But it's hard to there's not many more influential players than Goldson in the squad and in the strongest 11. So yeah, it's a major blow, like a big shock. And the situation with the squad, the fact that Simpson hasn't been included, does make it a major issue because yeah, you imagine that Calvin Bassey's going to come into the team, but I mean he is a left back. He was sort of tried out at centre back in pre-season before, and did okay by all accounts. He's a big physical lad, but I mean it's a big ask to go into a big important European game, made more important by the fact that Rangers lost the opener, and that was a home game as well. So need something out of this, and it's a big ask for Bassey. He's only really established himself, started to establish himself in the team, and he's a young lad.
He's played well though. He's
Yeah,
played well.
yeah.
And he's committed. I think one of the major problems though when he comes into centre back, one of the major gripes that people have had is his kind of ill judgment in the air. So I think that's going to obviously be seriously tested if he's put to centre back. I think Leon Balogun's automatically going to play now. But aside from Bassey, I mean, John Lundstrom, I've got no idea who else could play. And it's going to have to be him, surely.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's any other. I can't see any other option.
And then Patterson, it's like because you're looking at the defensive area of the squad. I mean, you wouldn't play Tavernier at centre half, but like you're down to the bare bones. And
I mean, was it not?
It's going to have to be Bassey. There's no one else. Sure.
And was Kyle McClellan not in the squad for the Leon? Was it the Leon game?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Pictures in training at least. I think you get a bigger squad in Europe.
He's and there's sort of a reward or a need to put homegrown players and stuff in it. He's the only actual natural centre back, but there's no way he's going to start the European game. I mean, he captained the youth team the other night playing on a Tuesday, so he's hardly going to play, and there's no way he'd be thrown in. Don't even know if he's travelled. So yeah, you go to the makeshift option and best of luck, Calvin. Off you go.
No, I know. I mean, I'm back a big guy to do well. I think by the way that they were speaking in the press conference, I think that Rangers are very aware that they're playing a decent team. You know what I mean? So I think it is a huge blow. I mean, Goldson plays every minute. Like any minute that he's available. I mean, obviously he couldn't play for that game earlier in the season, but if he could, he would have. He's literally the first name on the team sheet. So. It is a big blow, but I don't know. It's an interesting match in general. I think you're missing Goldson, you're missing Kent, you're missing Ryan Jack, who's obviously long term. Steven Gerrard said Scott Arfield never trained yesterday, but he's back in the squad today. So do you think, with all this in mind, that Rangers will still have enough to go to the Czech Republic and come out with something.
Yeah, I do think so. I think there's also, you sort of have to bear in mind that they're short of players as well. I think there was a piece today claiming that could be as many eight first team players missing for them. And sort of, as far as I can see, sort of all over the pitch, especially in terms of creativity, midfielder, winger, central striker, all missing. So I mean that'll mean that they'll have had to change things a little bit. They've started decently in terms of their domestic campaign. They're third, I think, at the minute, but not sort of, setting anything alight. And that first game, obviously, drawn with Brøndby in Denmark, it's an okay result away from home. But yeah, it doesn't suggest that this is a team that's gonna blow Rangers away. But I think both teams sort of carrying injuries, and it's just how Rangers deal with that. I think from one side of it, it's not as if they've been hit. Rangers have been hit with all these blows at once. Obviously Jack is a very important player, but I mean, he's been missing for so long at this point. Obviously not played at all this season. Kent's missed a couple of games. Hollander, has sort of been, everything's sort of come to terms with that. It's just the fact that Goldson, really highlights the issue at centre back, and it's just so inevitable, isn't it? You started the season being like Rangers have loads of centre backs, so that's going to be the area where you have to trim the squad, because it'd be ridiculous to carry that many into a season, and then you get rid of a few. Don't even pick all the ones that you still have in your Europa League squad, and then you end up short 2 games into the group stage. So maybe not great. Sometimes I think hands are tied in terms of homegrown players and things like that when you're making up that squad. But it does look an error at the minute not to have Jack Simpson in. Not that fans are overly enamoured by what he's done so far, but you'd much rather have a centre back with limited experience that he does have in terms of senior and high level football. You'd much rather have him in as a specialist than someone filling in, and the nerves that will probably come with that. Although Calvin doesn't seem to be the nervy type, to be fair.
No, it's huge. The Katic one's interesting because I don't think he would have played anyway. I think that he's got a kind of long road back from that injury, but George Edmondson scored last night for Ipswich, so it's like that's like kind of perfect timing for this to happen as well. But again, his future was kind of up in the air. Would he have got the minutes? And I don't know. It's hard. It's one of them things. You know what I mean? It's like it's happened. Rangers need to deal with it. They need to find a way to deal with it. I think it's hard. It's going to be Bassey and Balogun, and it's going to be a big test for Calvin Bassey. And I don't know. I think that when you have this kind of thing happen, sometimes you get like a kind of siege mentality, and it kind of lifts you, and it maybe focuses concentration, and maybe you'll kind of play an absolute blinder. You just don't know. But one guy that isn't playing is son. What were you saying there?
I lost you there.
I'm saying one guy who isn't playing is the boy that absolutely destroyed Celtic.
Yeah.
So he's not going to like ruin his reputation amongst Rangers fans anyway. But like you were saying, they've got a number of players out. I think they touched as well on the potential kind of reaction of fans after last season against Slavia, and the fact that Sparta have no adult supporters in the ground for tomorrow, but they've sold out their kind of kids, what do you call it, allocation. How do you think that's going to impact the game?
How weird is that going to be? I read their release today. It was actually like it was kind of impressive, but it was just essentially like a guide to having school groups at a stadium. It's really strange. So I'm not sure exactly how many. It's maybe like the 10 to 15 kids need to be accompanied by an adult or something like that. So they're saying it's 10,000 kids. It's not quite 10,000 kids. There'll be adults there, but
10,000 kids. 1,000.
It's gonna be like, I doubt it'll be the ultras as well leading them. Maybe they'll manage to sneak in. They'll 9-10 kids each, and then still get the ultras in. But I mean, it'll be a weird atmosphere, but a better one. I think both sets of teams will be happy enough with having something there. It's better than playing in a an echoey stadium, but I doubt any of the Rangers players will be quickening their boots going into it. I can't even remember. It's hard because some of the stuff doesn't translate that well from their initial tweets and stuff like that. But I get the impression that not all of them are even from the area and necessarily attached in any way to Sparta. That they're literally just school kids and groups from different parts of, I don't know, the greater region. It's not as if they'll all be there in their Sparta tops and stuff. The whole thing is that they're all coming, take advantage of free tickets and come watch some football. So, the sort of noises around goals might be a bit more high pitched than usual. But yeah, I doubt it's going to be an intimidating atmosphere.
I hope they're more shrieks than cheers. Like
yeah.
If you watched the press conference as well, people would have noticed that Steven Gerrard wasn't really happy with getting kind of pressed or the question being framed a certain way regarding Rangers' performances, and namely the one with Dundee, and asking if this could maybe inspire us into better form this match, if we can get a result. I think when you look at the injuries and the absence of Goldson, I think any result's a good result for Rangers tomorrow, regardless of performance. I think that idea might have left people's heads with the injury at Goldson. I think just getting something will be a positive result. But yeah, what was your thoughts on that? What was your thoughts on like the Gerrard, not so much Gerrard's reaction, but the kind of the conversation around it and Rangers' performance at the weekend and how our season's kind of going?
Yeah, I think it's a totally fair thing. Now, obviously, there's a limit to how many times you can ask the same question and what the answer is. How you can frame the answer, because it's probably going to be the same, that there's a bit more to come, but yes, we're still getting results. I did think he was pretty snappy, and he can be. I think that's a thing that he didn't really have at the start, but he's maybe just, the press conferences are racking up, and now he's just a little bit more snappy than he was at the start. He, is prepared to humour as much as he was before. I think it was slightly unnecessary, but I also think the fact that he is saying that, pointing to top of the league, with top of the table clash coming at the weekend and all this sort of stuff, it was quite defensive, and I think it's because he knows that it hasn't clicked. It just hasn't. I don't think there's many people who would say they're happy with necessarily the speed and the energy and that the team's been playing with so far, but could be further ahead in the league, and obviously could have done a lot better in Europe to this point, because in terms of the Champions League qualification and things like that. So it certainly hasn't been an immaculate start to the season. Maybe just fed up of hearing the same questions, but yeah, that it probably goes to this match now being, as you say, try and get something from it with a makeshift defense. But I mean, outside of the centre back situation, Rangers should still be able to put out a really strong team. And when it comes to domestic stuff, it should be better, and I think that's the thing that Gerrard and the rest of the coaching staff need to find a way to get back to that, because it's okay for him to be like, oh, it's last season's gone, but yes, it is gone, but it's largely the same group who are playing in a different style and producing more emphatic performances last year. So why aren't they doing it now? And that's a fair question to ask, if you ask me.
I think it's fair as well. I think maybe it was just a kind of protective thing over the players as well. Do you know what I mean? Because the players are still getting results for them, and they've still got to the top of the league. So I think a lot of it was maybe felt as if it was like it's overly harsh on a team that's still winning. I know, like, obviously we've still got to focus on the Sparta Prague game before the Hibs game, but that's an absolutely massive game as well at the minute. It's primed to be a big weekend in Scotland. There's been a lot of kind of talk from the kind of Celtic end as well. And see, this is something that kind of annoys me. See when your team's not playing well, suddenly you can't speak about your rivals. Nobody wants to hear about your rivals and stuff. But when your team is doing well, you're more than welcome to goad them. Like, you know what I mean? And you can discuss it because they're our biggest direct rival. So when I see like Ange Postecoglou losing the rag and stuff about this apparent like everybody's saying the season's over and that, like that's not happening. But Rangers' performances are obviously being helped by the fact that they aren't performing, and I think if you ask me which one I would take, if I would take us stumbling to get results over falling and apparently playing this amazing free flowing football at time, I think I'd probably take the results. So I don't know about you, but yeah, without going too far ahead, how do you see this game going against Sparta Prague tomorrow then?
I sort of still fancy Rangers. I think that it's almost it is a blow, as in for them not to have a full stadium and vociferous home support. I think that's part of it, and the injuries may equal each other out to a certain extent going into it. I still think a strong team can be put out with a lot of attacking threat and then also options off the bench. We can sort of go with pace or technical players and switch that as he sees fit. So I think based on sort of general European performances, I know that away hasn't been fantastic. A few draws, Porto, Feyenoord, and that massive win at Braga, sort of can summon nights like that. And I'm going to say 2-1.
2-1. That's solid. I think. I mean, I don't know, because I think that I don't know enough about Sparta Prague. Like I really don't. And I got a little bit more insight on Slavia when we played them last season, and by the looks of things, they're not as good as Slavia Prague at the moment, because they're behind them in the table. They never beat them last season. And yeah, I mean, I know they absolutely hammered Celtic, and I know our like backroom staff, management team have been really, really complimentary to them. So I don't want to underestimate them. But I mean, I'm always going to back the Rangers winning. I think if you looked at my predictions over Rangers have 100% record. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this time, or maybe I don't know. I'll go 1 each or 2-1. But I have to pick one, so I'll match you, right? I'll say 2-1 to Rangers. And I mean, I think it's set up to be a good game. I think this is probably our biggest rival for getting out the group. I mean, going by what Steven Gerrard said, is he said that Sparta Prague deserved to beat Brøndby in the first game. So I think if we get a good result in this game, and then we're going into that double header with Brøndby, I think we'll be very well placed if we can get through all those the next 3 matches in the group with positive results by the time we get Sparta back to Ibrox. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I just before we leave as well, you were at the Rangers Hammarby game last night as well, down in Dumbarton. How did you see that? What did you think of that?
Yeah, it was good to get accreditation for the club and to have a look at sort of the young team and what's coming through, because the last time they played in the UEFA Youth League, it was at that, but it was nearly 2 years ago against Atletico, and that was sort of Nathan Patterson, Kai Kennedy playing in that, and it's basically a totally different group now. So yeah, it was really, really impressive performance. I think when the two teams came out, Rangers were a very small side physically, and Hammarby were giant. So questionable that some of those guys were 19, like gigantic. And it sort of looked when they came out as if like, how is this going to work? How are Rangers going to dominate this? But certainly weren't phased by the sort of the gap in terms of physicality. Got the ball down and started playing really early, and it was so evident because you hear so much coming out of the club being like, it's one club ethos, the same playing style through everything, and you wonder how much, to what extent that can actually translate and sort of trickle down through the teams. But they played very much in the same way as the first team. Happy to play out from the back, fullbacks bombing forward the whole time. Front three in particular just interchanged at will. So it was Robbie Ure, Tony Weston, Ross McCausland. Weston's the top goal scorer, or Rangers' top goal scorer in the Lowland League. He was really bright. McCausland scored twice. Great feet. A couple of very different finishes. One from sort of the edge of the box. The other one a nice dink when he was through 1-on-1. And Robbie Ure had a bit of height and held the ball up well, and he took his first goal quite well as well. So, it was really impressive. Good to see Charlie Lindsay as well. That's the first time I've seen him, and he actually, so a bit like Davis, played with the number 10 in his back, but actually was relatively deep. He's quite sort of all action, but I think maybe when he came through at Glentoran, he played a bit further up. And at the Alcas Cup, because he was, scoring lots of goals and having lots of assists, but he really sort of dictated it. Last night was willing to sort of drop deep and ping diagonals and then try and get the ball into feet to the front three. He was very impressive. And one good save from the goalkeeper, but they weren't really tested that much. So, I mean, they were direct, and the Rangers staff were very sort of complimentary about Hammarby and saying that they hadn't been beaten in 18 months to 2 years, something like that, and looked really good. And when they were doing their analysis on them, but the one thing was that once they were put under pressure, and if you looked to dominate them, then their out ball was just pinging it long, and that's what they did. They didn't play much football all night, and it was a deserved win. So second leg is at the start of next month, and then if they can get through that, which on the evidence of last night, they certainly should. Then through to the second round, and I think it's a team from Bulgaria or Albania, depending on who wins that tie. So you would think, in theory, but that's decent and potential to progress to maybe meeting some of the big boys later on.
No, that was really, really interesting. And that Tony Weston boy signed for Blackpool. I remember when we signed him. And there's some real kind of talent or players that have a decent kind of reputation coming through at Rangers. I think the kind of B team thing that they've done this season has made a marked improvement since the last time that you've seen them.
Well, it definitely is hard to say, because that Atletico team were unbelievable before and absolutely played Rangers off the park. And there's guys who we now know. Actually, a guy who got a really hard time that day was Nathan Patterson. He was up against Rodrigo Riquelme, and he tortured him. And Murdy said, it was a massive learning experience for him. And then obviously he's kicked on and been brilliant at first team level. So it's probably hard to tell. Definitely in terms of like playing style, you could really notice a difference in terms of how similar it was to the first team this time around. But again, had a lot more of the ball in this game. But yeah, I think Weston came from Blackpool. I think he made an FA Cup appearance and stuff for them before he even came up. He is tiny, so short stature-wise, but really quick, low centre of gravity. And Aaron Lyle, I don't think I mentioned him. Alex Lowry came off the bench. He's been injured for, the coaches were saying he'd been injured for 3 or 4 weeks. He got 15 minutes at the weekend and half an hour last night, and good grief, he looks proper. Apparently he was really disappointed when he came off, said he didn't think he had done much, but thought he sort of ran it for the sort of half an hour, 25 minutes that he was on. Lovely feet, real confidence, real swagger about him, and he beat about 3 or 4 players and then poked the final finish straight at the keeper. It would have been an absolute wonder goal. So he was obviously probably the one that was closest to the first team in pre-season. I think he went to the Partick Thistle game without getting on. But yeah, he was really impressive off the bench for someone who's just come back from injury as well. So plenty of talent there, and it's just probably kicking on. It's whether the Lowland League games are high enough level every week, but if you can progress through that competition, then you're going to get proper challenges along the way. So that's probably a great thing.
I think one of the main things, it's a different experience, isn't it? It's different from what they've been used to. So if you're putting them into that environment, it's going to stimulate them in a different way. And I think there's going to be a growth from that anyway. I think it would be amazing to see Rangers have some kind of golden generation over the course of the next kind of 3, 4, 5 years. I think that would be really special. I think even if we can get 2 or 3 of these guys, and like Ross McCausland just scored a double. He signed a new deal. He's going to keep him there until he's at least 21. I think there's already, you mentioned Nathan Patterson. I think Stephen Kelly and Robbie McCrory are probably the next 2 from the academy that are closest to kind of creeping in. But then when you talk about these other guys like Tony Weston and what's his name, Alex Lowry, and and these guys that are kind of pushing in behind, I mean, it is quite an exciting time for the Rangers Academy, and like that's everybody loves like Blue Noses coming through and playing for the team. So hopefully hopefully something bigger than just top performances against Hammarby come from these showings. But yeah, awesome, amazing insight, Jordan. Enjoyed that. Anything else you want to add before we crack on here?
No, think all good.
No worries, right. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please click like, please click subscribe, please leave a comment below. And yes, hopefully Rangers manage to overcome the defensive problems and get a result in the Czech Republic against Sparta Prague tomorrow night.